So for this Lexicon video assignment, my assigned a term was imagery. So we'll look into that. So defining imagery. So when I found out what my term was, I decided to kind of make up my own definition of what I already knew about the term before looking anything up or looking in our book. Just looking back or thinking back to like literature and English classes and then using that knowledge to form my own definition. So that definition was using parts of speech to help enhance and produce a visual for the reader of any particular piece of work. Usually it's a poem or a book. Um, so using like verbs, nouns, adjectives to help form a better picture or to help form a picture in general for the reader. So then I went to our book, the backpack literature book, and I went to the index, looked at the pages that included imagery, and then looked at those pages and then formed kind of a definition based on what they said it was. And for that, I said the combined use of all images in a piece of literature to sometimes help arrive at a work's meaning can be used to look at the deeper meaning of certain literary work. So kind of like my definition, but it takes certain, for their definition, they say you take certain words and then you can kind of get the overall tone or meaning of a work by the words that are used. So then after looking in our book, I went online, Googled the definition of imagery, and found on the Oxford Languages definition that it is a visually descriptive or figurative language, especially in literary work, visual images collectively, or visual symbolism. So I think that the first part of this definition was my definition, while the second part was the backpack literature's definition. So it kind of goes hand in hand either way. So now we'll look at some examples of imagery. So I did some research and found some authors who use imagery quite often. The first of those being Ezra Pound. He was a early 20th century, late 19th century poet. He was an imagist, which was somebody who was part of the Imagism movement, which was also an early 20th century movement that used poetry that used very clear and concise language to help bring a certain image to the reader's mind. And Ezra Pound was one of the it was at the forefront of that movement, along with James Joyce, those two being pretty well-known poets. And one of his most famous works was In a Station of the Metro. It's only 2 lines long, but it goes as the apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bough. So I think he uses, wet black kind of help, get the mood of what he's seeing. These faces in a crowd that look like petals on a flower or something. So just the adjectives really help form an image in the mind of the reader. Another famous poet was Robert Frost. He has most of his work is about the environment or nature, and one of his most famous poems is "The Road Not Taken," about a man who arrives at 2 roads, doesn't know which one to take. The one that's been used quite a bit, he knows where it's going to lead. He knows he'll come out of it, or the one that really has never been taken, doesn't know where it leads, he doesn't know what's going to happen. And so the first line of that was, "The roads diverged in a yellow wood." When you read that, the first image comes to your mind of 2 roads diverging in the woods that are of a yellow color. An author that we probably all know is J.K. Rowling. She wrote all the Harry Potter books, and this excerpt here is coming from The Chamber of Secrets. Harry caught a whiff of damp earth and fertilizer, mingling with the heavy perfume of some giant umbrella-sized flowers dangling from the ceiling. So you think, when you're reading that, you think of like the earth and the damp and fertilizer and mud, and how it must have smelled with like a heavy perfume of whatever he was smelling. And then she uses giant umbrella-sized flowers dangling from the ceiling. When you read that, you think of exactly what she's saying. It brings that image to your mind. And then the final one was by Neil Gaiman, who is he's pretty modern. And this is coming from the Graveyard Book. The three faces staring into his could have been those of mummified humans, fleshless and dried, but their features were mobile and interested. Mouths that grinned to reveal sharp, stained teeth, bright, beady eyes, clawed fingers that moved and tapped. And I think this was probably the best example that I found, just because of the adjectives that are used, sharp, stained, bright, beady, clawed. Is another thing that really brought an image of those fingers to my mind. Fleshless and dried. It just really helps you understand what the reader's talking about, or what the writer's trying to describe. And then I also included an entire poem that we'll look at here, and look at the imagery that's used. And this one's also by Robert Frost. It's called Lodged. The rain to the wind said, "You push and I'll pelt." They so smote the garden bed that the flowers actually knelt and lay lodged, though not dead. I know how the flowers felt. So when you see those words, push, pelt, smote, knelt, dead, maybe lodged, it kind of brings kind of a aggressive feeling to the poem, just because of the pushing, pelt. Smote means to conquer. Kneeling, dead, just kind of brings an aggressive feeling to the poem. And when he's using that personification with flowers and kneeling, I think that really brings an image to the mind of the reader. They lay lodged, though not dead, kind of picturing flowers maybe hiding out while they're kneeling. Even though they're not dead, they're trying to hide from the rain and the wind. And then the last line, I know how the flowers felt, this kind of is Frost's way of saying, okay, I know what it feels like to be, pushed and pelted by something. So yeah.